So this is the entire system of putting a change in place. What we saw earlier from the structure, the framework, the governance, the 5C principles, the parameters, all this comes together in a 7-step system of changes. Changes, incidentally, in this case is again an acronym, and we'll go through that right now. Now you need to pay a little attention because we're bringing all of that together, right? And this will be used in your case study, mind you. So please pay specific attention to this and go through it again in case you have to, by understanding what was discussed in the previous ones. Okay, so first thing is the change, understanding the change. Remember we went through the understand the change? So the forms, you have to understand the forms of change. We talk about planned, unplanned, all those. So development and the whole transformational ones. So you need to understand what sort of change is getting carried on. Number one. Then the human change, the behavioral transformation that exists, the technical changes which are caused, right? And then which causes an organizational change. So this change understanding is very important so that you know what sort of change at what level is happening to what extent. So this helps you that factor. So the C of change is all about understanding the change. Okay. If not, please refer to the previous one that we discussed in detail. Then the heuristic structure. You remember I mentioned the 3M, the structure which is 3-layered, which is the strategy, planning and execution layer. The similar approach of that structure with tip, top and SOM is the heuristic structure we are talking about. The 3M model will consist of the structure to bring about those changes, right? And that is where the practitioners, in terms of the chief change officer, the planning committee and the execution committee will work together to bring about the change, and tip, top and SOM become the key ingredient to pass them the current analysis of the current system, right? By virtue of using either a riot model or the EPIC framework in general, and they will then the top comes into existence, right? And they pass it on to SOM. He works out the whole gap analysis and does the planning for the whole activity. So this is where the heuristic structure really comes into existence from execution standpoint, using the frameworks mentioned. Now the frameworks that were mentioned earlier, that is the next one, right? So the heuristic change is the H of the change. Now we come to the A, that is CHA of the change, where it's articulated change management framework. Okay, this is the one we discuss as EPIC framework, and I just mentioned to you. That is how it is used over here, where you go about putting the evaluation, preparation, implementation, and then going about with the continuous improvement, right? The one that we just recently discussed in the previous lecture. Now what has happened up till now? You understood the change, you formulated a structure, and then you planned the change by using that structure to now go about implementing it using the EPIC framework, right? Now in the EPIC framework there were methodologies. So you're using naturalistic methodologies for implementing the EPIC framework. Okay, so RIOT comes into existence, which is rise up, impact, opine and tune, which we just discussed, right? Hence it was discussed so that you understand this better. So the RIOT methodologies are used for making those respective incremental changes, if you will, or the holistic changes that are required. And while implementing, there is governance to be done. So the next G comes into existence. So the G of the G for change comes from governance with the principles and the key parameters that are required. We discussed the 5C principles and then the sort of parameters that go into play, right? That is formulated here. Though it is formulated at the planning stage itself when the structures are formed, but while the execution is on, this comes into existence more holistically. Okay. Now after the governance, we move into the larger purpose, how the leadership is carried on. All right, because when the risk happens, the chaos is happening, and the executions are creating so much of implementation kind of risk factors. The real leadership comes out then. Okay, and that's why we're calling it erudite leadership with the right members and skills, which is then christened as monk, right? So monk with 5 T skills is again the ultimatum, that is the topmost center of our pyramid of rise, right? The monk. This is what this means. The monk consists of a mindset of being modest, with openness, right? Now, please understand, this has been derived from the future outlook of where the world is moving, okay? So, these are key leadership skills that are required now on to meet the future. So, a monk stands for a mindset with the M of the monk being modest, the O being openness, right? So, modest means a humble human being, and open means it's transparent. Then natural global citizen. What does it mean? He is so aware of the global environment and the changes and everything that the knowledge where is good enough to anticipate what is going to happen next. And whatever is passed on as information, he can assimilate at his own level or her level to ensure that change is right in terms with the global requirements, and so managing the cultural aspects of his organization or his or her organization. With that said, the K stands for the keen technologies with humility. We've been discussing technology being imbibed in any business out there, right? And now joining hands. So every business is a technology business also. So technology is an inherent behavior for any of the leaders that exists out there. So they will know, right? They have wearing a CIO's hat or a CTO's hat while they're wearing a CEO's hat, okay? And they're executing a task with humility, right? So the humbleness that we talked about being modest, the humility factor of technology, because they will know enough technology, but they will still give a chance for the right technology teams to come about to execute it, right? Without really denying, but where he or she sees a resistive one or where they think they're going wrong, he should be capable enough to not be taken kind of advantage of, okay? And can be able to push back because of the technology knowledge that even at the monk level the one has, okay? Right. With that, what are the 5 skills that we are calling the 5 T skills, because they starts with a T. So monk with the 5 T skills, leading the leadership for change, is the required one, and the T consists of the first T is the trainer and teacher, okay? He should be a born trainer, right? Because teaching will never end, and we all know that change will bring out the teaching and the training every time. So he comes with that ability for his next layer or layer after that to train them until the point to come to the monk level. All right. Number 2, he should be a trend follower and trend setter at the same time. Right. So what is happening in the world, though he is not getting adapted to the fad of the world, but he'll pick and choose which is right for the organization, but is aware of what is happening out there. Right. So that the competition is not taking advantage and he's sitting behind, but he is aware what competition is doing, what is the trend, will it be effective, does the analysis, use tip, time and so on, and then takes his own decision whether that trend should be followed through or not, okay, and should be taken to its advantage. So that's the second one. So he should know the trends. Third is a technology enthusiast. So he's ready to learn every time, okay, basically technology. So he's a technologist from that point of view, very passionate about learning technology. So that's the third point. Fourth is transmitter. It's all about communication, right? What he's receiving, he's also transparently communicating to the larger world to understand, transparently and inherently talking about the facts that can be seen in the future, or what can happen or hamper the organization because of which, and what is to be done now. So that communication with all the principles and the parameters we talked about earlier is inherent as a transmitter. So he's a fantastic communicator, or he or she. And then he's a true empath. So he's built in with a lot of empathy towards the others and the fellow human being, so that he relates to them when there is an issue. So emotional quotients are very high, okay, and hence the decision making capability towards that factor plays an important role. So a monk with 5T skills is the leadership that one looks at during this process, and is the leadership for the future organizations also, and that is imbibed into the change management process, where they start also looking at other leaders who come up and rise to the monk level with 5T skills, right? So this is the E, that is the erudite leadership with the right mindset and skills. So monk mindset with 5T skills, right? And the S, the final change is S, right? Setting the culture for growth. Okay. Now, growth is inevitable, change is inevitable, so this should be imbibed into any systems. So the culture that is set forth should be that of a growth system, because if we saw the Kubler-Ross model again, there is you come up as a startup, you go through very rapidly through a growth, then you stabilize, then you degrowth, and then you are back again, right? So the very fact you're in business is for growth, right? And of course, you have a larger service to be given to the purpose that you set it up for. So with that, the growth becomes inevitable. So culturally, it should be adopted as a system for growth. So hence, culture plays an important role, and hence the setting of culture for growth is an inherent behavior that one sets up in the organization. So changes is a 7-step process, and this is what was described through for any change management exercise. Clear? So once you follow this, it will be very easy for you to demonstrate to your potential customer and help as a practitioner to follow these steps to get it done, and use the 3M model along with the heuristic structure to execute this. And you might not go wrong if you follow the right 5C principles along with the parameters. Okay. On that note, what we will now jump into is a template which will be given to you and you can download, and then you will do a case study which we will look at in the subsequent steps. All right. There we go. I'll see you in a minute.